BBC4's A Night of Numbers begins now with a short film exploring the Ethiopian system of multiplication, a bizarre system that ignores some numbers and dismisses others as unlucky.
Could you imagine a world without fractions? A world where you could throw away your times tables? Well, there has been such a world here in Ethiopia, where for thousands of years merchants used a strange yet very sophisticated system of multiplication to calculate the price of goods at markets throughout the Horn of Africa and the Middle East. Today, the price of Ethiopian coffee is calculated on cash registers. But where we in the West rely on modern technology, thousands of years ago, traders made their calculations with pebbles. All they needed to know is how to halve a number and how to double it. To Western eyes, the Ethiopian system is so strange that it seems more like a magic trick. To multiply 11 by 15, put the numbers into 2 columns. Keep halving the number on the left, ignoring all fractions. 11 becomes 5, becomes 2, until you reach 1. In the other column, you double. 15 becomes 30, becomes 60, becomes 120. Whenever an even number appears in the halving column, ignore the row. Group the remaining beans in the doubling column together and count. You get 165, the perfect answer. It seems unbelievable that a system can ignore fractions, even throw away parts of the calculation and still come up with the right answer. But it works every time. Take another example. When we multiply 31 by 25 using long multiplication, we multiply 31 first by 5 and then by 20 and add the results together. In Ethiopia, instead of multiplying by 5 and 20, they were effectively multiplying by 1, 8 and 16, just a different way to arrive at the number 25. By doubling a number, you're just multiplying by powers of 2. In our right-hand column, the number 31 has been multiplied by 1, then 2, then 4, then 8, and finally 16. But all that we need are the numbers that make up 25, that is the 1, the 8 and the 16. And here's the clever bit. By crossing out the even numbers on the left, you're always left with the correct powers of 2 on the right. In this case, the 2 and the 4 disappear, leaving 1, 8 and 16. By breaking the multiplication into powers of 2, the calculation has been converted into base 2 arithmetic. Once the sum has been broken down, all that remains is a simple addition. It's a system that seems completely foreign to Western eyes, but in fact we use it thousands of times a day because it's this system that powers today's computers.
So there are 3 ways in which this is written. Secondly, it's breaking multiplication down into a series of addition. And thirdly, it's breaking everything down into very simple steps.
Making calculations as simple as possible was all the inventors of the Ethiopian method wanted to do. The solution they came up with is central to the way we live today. The ways they perform their calculations are almost exactly the same as the working methods of a computer. Amazingly, it seems that centuries before the invention of computers, Ethiopian traders cracked the code that lies behind the modern age. To learn more about numbers, go to the Open University's website at open2.net.
Running African, reuniting the African family for development.
All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum, Running Africa, and in this segment of the program, we're asking why the Jamaican government and the JLP at the time made Dr. Walter Rodney an unwelcomed person in 1968. But we're also looking at the life and times of Dr. Walter Rodney, especially right here in Jamaica and the Groundings with the brethren. In the studio, my own very, very good friends, and friends also to Dr. Walter Rodney, Pan-Africanists, both Rastafarians, and Jerry Small is a broadcaster and is joining me in the studio. His program, Straight Up, is on News Talk 93. Morning, Jerry. How are you doing?
Good morning, ma'am.
All right. Also, Nana Esiboa, Sister Minnie. I have to say both Sister Minnie so that people know that it's you, same one. So we have to practice to do this in the studio with me this morning. Nana Esiboa, good morning.
Good morning. Give thanks and praise.
Thanks for coming in. We're going to go to the phone lines shortly where friend, activist, Rastafarian elder and teacher, also friend of Dr. Walter Rodney, Frank Asphalt, will be joining us on the phone lines. I've been talking a lot about Rupert Lewis's booklet on Walter Rodney because reading that, I got a better insight, because I've read a lot about Dr. Walter Rodney, but I got a better insight of what was actually happening in terms of the day-to-day events on the ground here in Jamaica. Sister Minnie, you were right there. How did you meet Walter Rodney? Nana Esiboa, how did you meet Dr. Walter Rodney?
Give thanks. Well, I was fortunate at the time dealing with culture. I was an activist, Black Power, Miriam Makeba, and I grew up dealing with Black Power and moving with Jerry Small, Garth White, Peter Phillips. As I like man company, so they were my friends, you know.
Yes.
That time they were going to JC school and they would get out and come in my ear and sit with me and talk with me about Rastafari, because they were young youth,
yes,
who in school, the first set of Rasta youth in Jamaica at JC that start proclaiming Rastafari. God White, where is here with Big Afro, Jerry Small and, you know, Peter and Tees and a brother named Poco Morgan, and they all would come and sit with me and talk with me, and so I get into, and we go dance in the weekend time and listen to culture. So
Frank.
Somebody,
Walter Rodney.
Dr. Walter Rodney came to the university, and Jerry and the brethren them get in touch with him and reasoning with him, and anywhere they go I would go with them, because at that time there was no female in my age group saying Rastafari that I could
yes,
associate it. So it was peer brethren. I'm one woman going with all 15 brethren and dance everywhere, lecture, sit down to reason, go to Warwicker Hill, go to Trenchtown, all about. So but Dr. Walter Rodney was there with us, and he was teaching. You would have youth like from Excelsior, Georges and all those places, those schools would come by our home where we located in Augustown.
So a lot of the groundings that we hear about took place. You were actually part of this.
We were right there.
All right. Jerry, for yourself, and a lot has been written in that book about you as a young person. Well, I remember reading it and I said, yeah, that is why Jerry understands so well. And every time we talk, you always say to me that, but you've been doing this since you were a child. But it's the very same thing for you in terms of starting, understanding yourself at a very, very early age as an African, and also your purpose. How did Dr. Walter Rodney fit into that?
Well, fortunately for a lot of us, two things I want to tell you quickly. Fortunately for a lot of us, our grandparents was Garveyites, and our parents, although they weren't outspoken in public, they were brought up that way, so we was always Africa-oriented, Garvey-oriented. When I reach teenage now, I say, I need some leadership from someone who is living and present. Garvey is no longer around. And so I reach into the company of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie. Now at Jamaica College, when you go out to Cornwall College, if you beat Cornwall College, it's difficult for you to leave Montego Bay safe, because people will mash you down because them love Cornwall down there. When you go to Sabina Park, if you beat KC, it's not so bad, but if you beat Georges, you have to be in trouble. You're in trouble. So standpipe was a garrison of Jamaica College. The people of standpipe used to guard Jamaica College from the 40s and the 50s. down at Sabina Park for leave if you beat George. Now, George is not bad, you know. But you have some Georges supporter, they will beat you. So anyway, those is two little things happen. So we're growing up as militant youth. And then now, human rights here was coming about in 1968. The government of Jamaica, one of the first things them did after independence was to try to mash down Rasta in 1963. 8 months after independence, that was the first move against the human rights of the people in Jamaica. So we as teenagers, we decided in 1967 that since 1968 is going to be human rights here, we are going to organize to demonstrate that human rights must be respected in Jamaica. So we organized from 67 under the name African Youth Move, with a few sisters like Sista Minnie involved. Very few. Sister Bonnie, my girlfriend Sandra White, God White sister.
With my wife.
So in December 1967, Walter Rodney returned to university where he was a student. He returned now with a doctorate in African history and thing. And by January 1968, Peter Phillips and my friend Michael Morgan Poco told me that there's a young man come back here teaching African history and he would like to help us in the work that we are doing because we was publishing a newspaper talking about Africa and our regaining of our rights.
What newspaper was that?
Black Man Speaks. Frank Asphalt was a printer.
Yeah.
And was a writer. And myself and Gartwright and most of it was writers.
So how old were you then, Jerry, when you were
I was 19 years old and I left Barclays Bank where I was working to help set up this newspaper here in 1967.
Right.
So we started to publish this paper and Walter Rodney decided to come in and help us in information for the paper because he was coming back from Africa where he was teaching in Tanzania and he also was a part of the African Liberation Movement, trained and practiced even in the Liberation Front among some of the soldiers.
I married somebody from here, too.
And say that again, Sister Minnie?
I think his wife come from...
His wife was from Guyana. She was a nurse.
Yes.
She was working in Jamaica at the hospital, but very militant, helping the sisters and helping in the health and welfare while raising our little son named Shaka, who was about 1.5 years old. Shaka.
So that one of the things that I read, Jerry, is your own first impression of Walter Rodney, that when you saw him, your first impression was, but this is a young man. And you said that to Rupert Lewis, I think, in the book he talked about that.
Yeah.
That your very first impression of him, that's such a powerful person. But
he was 25 years old in January 1968. When I met him, and he already had his PhD coming back from London, and he was humble. The thing about him, he was so humble and quiet, but militant and fierce.
And very short and a big afro.
Yes, and Sister Minnie, Jerry mentioned the Black Man Speaks, that paper. You also were integrally involved in that in terms of what?
Follow them around the 14th parish to deliver it
yes.
to like people like D.K. Duncan, who used to work very militant, you know. There's a lot of brethren when they were young, they were very militant, and we want to shake them up and ask them what happened now. Like D.K. Duncan, all around the 14th parish would take this because it was about police brutality. Yeah. You know, you see pictures of them, and that time police used to take electric wire and beat people. When you look at their back, it's like when they show you Jesus, when you know, with Jesus. So there was a lot of brutality. You'd see them scalp Rasta people at that time. So this paper were, you know, showing
what year was that?
Well, let me tell you something my sister Minnie don't remember what she used to do. She used to go around like some of the rest of us and collecting things to be published in the paper. Now Bob Marley and Rita Marley had left Kingston in disgust because they used to support certain fundraising efforts towards African Rasta. And when them go up on the show and make money for the show, the money would disappear or not be used for the purpose for which the fundraising was advertised. So they left Kingston in disgust and they refused to go on certain fundraising show. And Sister Minnie was in contact with Sister Rita and go and get letters to the editor. We have our paper, we write articles, but we also have letters to the editor from the public, like we have people calling to talk show.
Right.
Well, Sister Minnie used to bring letters where Bob Marley himself write as a youth, and Sister Rita write poetry, letters, complaints, and explanation with them write. And when Walter Rodney was going abroad on the Black Writers Conference in October 1968, he used to come to my yard with Bobby Hill to try to get different publications and writings, because it's a Black Writers Conference for the world, and you must try to bring in all of the writings of the black people. So he used to come, they used to come on my yard where we used to do most of the editing. And I remember handing over letters to them written in handwriting by Sister Rita Marley and Bob Marley, letters to the editor, poetry, and they hand over a lot of those things to them to go to the conference to show people what was happening in America and around the world. And Sister Minnie used to do some of them gathering there.
Yeah. And you talk about Frank Asphalt as the printer, for the Black Man Speaks. He joins us on the line now. Yes. Greetings, Frank Asphalt. Thanks for joining us on the Africa Forum.
Hello. Greetings, Sister Andrea.
Give thanks, my brother.
Jerry.
Yes, Frank.
Bless.
Bless up, bless up.
I tell you.
All right, Frank, we're kicking off, not a whole lot of time to discuss this, but we're kicking off just by looking back about on those early days. I wanted to ask you, Jerry mentioned earlier the Black Man Speaks in the newspaper and your own role in that, but also a little bit about how you met Walter Rodney, and tell us about the Black Man Speaks at the same time.
Yeah, well, I did not really fathom the depth of the work that I and Jerry was really doing as youth in the depressed communities around Kingston. But it was not until I really heard on the news, you know, that a couple of buses were turned over and burned, and the city was set on fire, you know, and different parts of the city, and the people identified like as oppressors were pulled from them campfire, you know, and different parts of the city, and the people identified like as oppressors were pulled from them cars and beaten. You know, and a numerous store windows smashed and all those things.
Yes.
You know, and as Rodney said, downtown Kingston looked like Hurricane Flora passed through. You know, all this just never really happened, you know, in an isolated incident, you know.
Yes.
It was like a part of a growing black revolutionary activities that was growing due to the significant amount of footwork that was done by Jerry and myself, you know, and a number of other youths at the time. So that was long before Rodney come on the scene, you know.
Yes, yes. So
it was just
what drove this this black revolutionary black power movement as far back as the 60s among young people like yourself, like Jerry, like Sister Minnie? What fueled that?
Well, I was influenced by Rastafari movements, you know, because, as I say, you know, we were kind of fed up with the system, you know what I mean? And so that time of the rising up of African Rasta, black consciousness, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That eventually, you know, rallied behind the Rodney movement, you know? Because I remember like, you know, His Imperial Majesty after the state visit in 66, and the GLP government, you know, which was led by Hugh Shearer, you know what I mean, was, you know, kind of insecure, you know, and, you know, feel threatened by the African youth move, as Jerry mentioned earlier, that I don't know what you used to call the movements then, you know. And, you know, also the African awareness, Rasta ideology, you know, catching on among youth, both grassroots youth and some middle class, upper class youth, you know.
Yes. So, Jerry, at some point, Jerry, Walter Rodney became a threat to national security. So it would not just be Walter Rodney, it would be the brethren, right?
Yeah, hear this now.
Yeah.
As Walter Rodney wrote in his most well-known book, or probably the second well-known book after How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, The Groundings with My Brother, he started out saying, I did not start anything in Jamaica. I went to Jamaica and found some youths working together, and I decided to attach myself to them and help them. So this thing was going on a long time. May I say also this, a lot of people give us credit, especially the youths at JC in the 60s, because His Imperial Majesty visited JC when he came here. A lot of youths give us credit for being the earliest youths from high school or so-called middle-income family. Well, let me tell you this. Brother Sterrett, who was going to excel in the early 40s, was a Rastafari youth from in the early 40s, in school. Brother Sterrett Sterro from Upper Hope Tavern. Brother Herman King, born 1935. And the son of the mayor of Kingston from in the 50s as a so-called middle-income educated youth, the son of prominent politician, was a high school youth, at Excelsior, Happy Grove. I think he did go KC, went to several schools, always agitating. Although him born in privilege, he uses privilege. Like young Rastafari, decided to use his privilege on behalf of the people. These people are almost a generation ahead of himself and Gartwright and Peter Phillips. So I have to give credit to them man from in the 40s. Sam Clayton and those youth, high school youth, well educated, have up the struggle from that time. So Walter Rodney came into something that was happening, and worse now, in the early 60s, I have to give credit to my wife and my girlfriend at the time, Sandra White, was the person who did the most to popularize the stopping of straight of here by young militant black people. And by early 1968, she met up with Sista Minnie, who was also doing work in the youth between Standpipe, Augustown, and Hermitage, convincing young girls to stop straight in them here and to move militant together. So when you see the young daughter, them come together, young man, it was like an explosion. Then now, the government of Jamaica had been acting against Rastafari as the biggest threat, because Rastafari was a set of people educating the people that we must not bow to these politicians and our rights are not being recognized. So when Walter Rodney, as an academic, as a teacher, university lecturer, because the Jamaican people in those privileged positions were afraid to link together with the people and the young people. But Walter Rodney, somebody outside of Jamaica, was not afraid. And when we were carrying him around, helping him, him helping us by lecturing about African present liberation struggle and African history, it was a reaction by the government who was afraid. And 1968 marks the year when the people of Jamaica started to demonstrate that the opposition was no better than the ruling government, the JLP, and the PNP was in trouble. That's why Norman Manley resigned and retired from politics, because he is no longer relevant. And his generation has done their work. The new generation of young militant nationalists must come up now and join the people's struggle. Most of the PNP joined with Shearer in condemning Rodney and condemning the black militant movement. Norman Manley, to his credit, said it is a legitimate movement. Siaga was one of the few in the GLP who said nothing wrong with black power, but he was using his brain, which is very big and very sharp.
So that Sister Minnie and Jerry talk about, you know, even the work that you did on the ground, the grassroots works in talking to women individually about themselves, about them African consciousness. So this was not just, this was a comprehensive movement for African centeredness.
Yes, we used to wear Africa, eat Africa, talk Africa, night and day. We don't sleep as youth, you know. So
what was the response like generally among let's say women?
At that time it was very, very hard. It was rough because them didn't see Rasta in the light. We come and turn on the light to young people. Because when Rasta rise up in Jamaica, Rastafari rise up in Jamaica, you know, they rise up dread because they had to defend themselves. So a lot of people was kind of scared. They didn't used to it. So what the youth them is getting now, they are getting it polished, prepare and put down for them, and I want them to know, if they ever know how this mission come about and where it come from, they would address themselves. You understand?
So that Frank, when Hugh L. Shearer declared that Walter Rodney, and of course, as Jerry pointed out, and as Walter Rodney himself wrote in his book, that here you have a movement that was now a threat to national security. He identified Walter Rodney. Why was Walter Rodney identified? Was he considered a leader, or was he easier to deport? Hey, Frank? Frank, we lost you? All right, I think we lost Frank. All right, take it, Jerry.
May I say this? They hear this now. Rastafari now was a set of people who was willing to put out themselves there and take the risk of educating people. And not only that, I have to give great credit to Clement, Brother Eric Clement, historian, one of the few Rastafari from those days who used to preach, we must stress our economic development and not neglect our gathering economic strength and stop talking about the money, because we need money to educate the people. And the things start to gather, and the government realized that this set of people will not turn back, and this set of people will insist upon the rights of the Jamaican people and insist that the government are our servant and not our masters and mistresses.
Back up a little, and we know we don't have a whole lot of time, but I wish we did. Back up a bit and let us talk about, if you can, bullet point in a way. what were you all teaching? What were you all saying to people that made this, this government say, here, these people are a threat to national security, crush them at whatever cost? Yes, go ahead.
Rastafari was going to come to Jamaica, His Imperial Majesty, and he was preparing a set of youth, because it's when Rastafari come here, one out of every house say Rastafari. Society get mad, get the children into asylum, give them tablets, make them sleep for days, turn them, shock them, just because everyone in every house, Chinese, white, everybody was saying Rastafari when Selassie came here. So he was preparing us spiritually, even though we didn't know that, that he was coming. So we were prepared in a spiritual way. Otherwise, from that, when we were growing up here in the 60s, we have to call little white children Mr. and Miss when they were calling our grandmothers by their first name. It was slavery in Jamaica at the time, so we had to break that band for our children to come. We said we would never make our children come and live into this, and we fought for it.
I am going to take a quick break. Frank? All right, we lost your bit, so hold the line for me, please. I'm going to take a quick break and come right back to continue this discussion. A minute now after 8 o'clock, you're inside of the Africa Forum, Running Africa. And why did the JLP government, why did the Jamaican government at the time declared Walter Rodney persona non grata? In the studio, Nana Esibo, Sister Minnie, Jerry Small on the phone lines, Frank Asphalt. Frank, we were asking earlier about Walter Rodney being declared persona non grata in Jamaica. And not just that, but being declared a threat to national security. And of course, we're saying that obviously it's Walter Rodney and the movement, the people who are on it, the young people, the young revolutionaries, a threat to national security. And the question we're asking from your own perspective, what was Walter Rodney saying? What were you all saying that made the government so afraid of a group of young people and a university lecturer and academic?
Well, youth in the poorer communities of Kingston was really suffering huge amount of police brutality, in truth, Law enforcement them so vicious, that a whole lot of youth were being prosecuted and locked up, and chump up charges like for illegal possession of ganja, which carried a mandatory sentence at the time, 18 months straight, possession of a little split, charges for suspicion, charges for lightering, youth for just sit down on the corner and really a reason. Not to mention, like on the herb camps, them where the real hardcore reasoning used to take place, These camps are frequently raided by police trying to arrest youth, not just through we organized. The injustices met out to I and I was very terrible, right?
Yes.
So, and I even remember a time when the Prime Minister told the beast them that, whenever confronted by the criminals, which is really I and I, my Nigeria, myself and stuff.
Yes.
They have to find a distance between them and the criminals before them shoot them,
Right,
and
yes.
this is
Shoot first. Shoot first and ask question later.
You understand? So,
and a lot of utterances were made by you, sure, at the time about
him name share out. Him said no book and black people must ever enter this country. If you ever bring one through the airport, they take it away from you. Nothing. When you go in the bookstore, you couldn't find nothing. Could you believe it? A black man after they banned Rodney from coming here.
But Jerry, I've thought about this long and hard. It's not something that I met in terms of my studies in school, so I had to go research all of them things here over time. And I've thought about this long and hard in terms of Hugh Shearer at the time, the role that he played in quashing and oppressing black people and the movement for African-centeredness and full liberation. But that he must have been supported by the entire cabinet and to a large extent by the opposition.
Yes, well, this is the point, Andrea. The opposition, the PNP, was no threat to the repression of the government of Jamaica and the JP. They were no threat. The threat to them was the young militant African youths and some other non-African youths who moved with them. So we was the effective opposition, and they know that Rastafari and the Garveyites and all of the well-thinking people. Call it, for instance, When they came, after them ban Rodney, and the place erupt, the whole island erupt in demonstration, we know they were coming for us. They banned him on the 16th of October, and they came for us on the 22nd of October. When they came, the people of Jamaica realized that they were wrong. They framed us. Because when they said that we're planning to overthrow the government and kill out white people, the six of them held, Sister Minnie and Sista
Pauline.
Two twin sisters there, yeah. Sister Minnie and the next sister was there. Them said no woman in amongst my sister. Two women was there, teenage woman. A Chinese brother, Ozzy Ping Chong, a Latino Jamaican, who is Eugene McNair, and a white Jamaican, David DePaz, who are Rasta from about KC in the 50s and play Sunlight for KC. So when they saw this mixture of youth, one black Jamaican youth, two black Jamaican sister, one Chinese Jamaican as a Rasta youth, one Latino Jamaican, and one white Jamaican. It looked so ridiculous for them to be trying to prove that we is a black set of militant out to overthrow the place and kill white people. Now hear this now. What we used to do in helping to educate, not only was to print these newspapers, when we keep dance around Kingston and around the country, at midnight, we used to lock off the sound and play the speeches of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and various other people, and chant our own poetry. So myself and Frank as well as two of the primary people who used to lock off the lyrics in the sound and use the rhythm behind the music and chant our poetry over it from 1967. That is how the thing that later became called dub poetry in the early 70s. That's how that started.
I smiled just now when you were talking, Jerry, because I thought of Roger Asphalt, who's Frank's son, who's doing the exact same thing right now in terms of the poetry.
Yes, Roger born in this.
Yes.
Because when I meet Frank Asphalt in 1966, little after his mother come in Allman Town, he was doing the same work. Me and him find out, so the two of us was probing about the Ethiopian World Federation, which is Imperial Majesty set up in 1937 to link up the African people in the world. Because Marcus Garvey was one of the main people helping Haile Selassie, and Haile Selassie helping Marcus Garvey as two young men in the early century. When Marcus Garvey was exiled to England after Jamaica fight him out of Jamaica in 1935, by the next year Haile Selassie was also exiled in England. The two of them were there. A misunderstanding developed on the part of Marcus Garvey, who said that Haile Selassie don't want to meet with him. And Marcus Garvey withdrew support from Haile Selassie and started to talk against him. But I still love Garvey. So because Marcus Garvey withdrew the support, Haile Selassie was forced to form an organization now because the UNI was dwindling and getting weaker. So Haile Selassie was forced to form an organization to link up the African people in the world, named Ethiopian World Federation.
Yes. When
I meet up with Frank Asphalt in about April 1966, I find that he was one of the people probing this Ethiopian World Federation and determined to help make it grow from strength to strength, because each one of the branches of the Ethiopian World Federation was being treated like the personal property of the president. Almost every president of the Ethiopian World Federation, once they got elected, they took it as their personal property. No more election was held, and it's like them control it for themselves.
But Jerry, it seems to me, and we want to come back, but I have to make a comment that, this is, you're talking about what year? The 60s?
66,
but this seems to be the bane of our existence in terms of when organizations are formed that we sit, that black people sit down at the helm
today,
without wanting to move. It's become them personal or them family property.
Yes, like the Millennium Council today. The organizations tend to be controlled by a little clique of people who take it as their personal property. The Ethiopian World Federation Charter 15, the greatest organization we ever developed amongst Rastafari, which later became known as the 12 Tribes of Israel. Why has it become so non-active? Because the executive members have not been used to decision making. All decisions were taken by one person for the most part. And the rest of the people just there and their brain become like atrophied. Like it's a stroke them over the head, cannot make decisions. And all of the Rastafari organization, Local 37 became like the personal property of Martin McPlanner. Local 7 became the personal property of Mr. Downer. Local 31 was like the personal property of Mr. Brown. No more election held. And they just dictate to you. Haile Selassie set up the OAU to show them so we must practice democracy, practice the Constitution, review the work of the leaders, and change them how we want to be changed. But this is why the millennium comes and so on become the personal property of a little clique of people, not answerable to anyone. We will change these things.
Of course, and Jerry, I want to go there, but we want to, because we have just about 25 minutes left, and want us to talk some more about the situation that led to the government taking such draconian attitude to Walter Rodney in terms of deporting him, exiling him, and doing it in the manner in which they did it. And you talked earlier about they came for you, and when they came for you, how many of you they came for? Let me just go quickly to Frank. Frank, from your own perspective, in your own opinion, why do you think that the Jamaican government took such draconian actions against a 26-year-old historian? Activist, at least.
Well, you know, as I said, we were organizing ourselves, right? And in these depressed communities, and you know, I actually met Rodney, you know, like through Jerry, you know what I mean? So normally we would have take Rodney outside of the boundaries, like get us,
yes,
you know, the grassroots youth, and especially on the weekends, you know. And at that time, Jerry and I were publishing this Polish magazine, you know, Black Man Speak and so on. We got hot, every scrutiny from the system, so we had to be moving from place to place. So we actually started out as foot soldiers, right, for the movement. And we took Rodney to places such as Argosttown, Rallington Town, place called Wembley Sports Clubs, where the Dunham School is at right now. Took him down to the Marburger Gully, you know. We were working with.
And so was it in these, and Walter Rodney himself wrote about, you know, the discussions, the conversations in these gullies. And here we have, you know, a PhD.
Yes.
You know, was traveled the world, multilingual, because he was speaking many languages by that time, including Swahili, French, Spanish, Portuguese, sitting with. Of course, you have people like Jerry and others, and you talk about the middle-class youth and so on, the uptown youth who was part of that. But sitting with people in the dongle, sitting with people in the gullies, what was he saying to these people? And who were these people? Were they young people? Were they male? Were they female? What kind of conversations were going on there?
Well,
yes, Jerry.
I want to tell you, one of the main kind of work that he did, Walter Rodney and his wife, Pat Rodney, was two of the main people who helped to familiarize the people of Jamaica about Nelson Mandela, who had been imprisoned from the day before Jamaica got independence. The 5th of August 1962, Nelson Mandela began his 27-year prison sentence. But it was a life sentence, but he was released after 27 years. Walter Rodney, Miriam Makeba, and Pat Rodney, Walter Rife, and a few more people like that were familiarizing the people in the Western Hemisphere, the black people, that in Africa there was somebody like them stand up and who grew up in privilege. Nelson Mandela was from a royal African family. He decided to use his privilege on behalf of the people, like Mahatma Gandhi, whose struggle started in Africa as an Indian fighting for Indian rights. And this man was now in prison, and his young wife was outside, like Minnie Smith, who later was Minnie Phillips, the mother of Michael Phillips. Not to mention the wife and the producer of 5 or 6 children. 4 children for Peter Phillips, militant and educated. People like Minnie Phillips, people like Miriam Makeba, people like those wives like Bonnie Cunningham.
Yes, and your wife, son.
So these people, the people familiarizing the people of the West of the struggles like people of, like Winnie Mandela, who was, her husband was taken away from her after a few months or years of marriage, and she carried out that struggle and kept his name alive and kept the African. So Walter Rodney, that kind of work, he was making people know, say, outside of Jamaica, things are going on, not just Black Panthers, not just we in Jamaica, right around the world, and the thing was growing. Marcus Garvey was alive again.
And I want people to know that this Mr. Peter Phillips, you have to give credit where it is due.
Yes.
He was the only Rasta man of a car to take everybody from here to Timbuktu. He borrowed his mother car and carried it back days after. Only car amongst Rasta.
Anglia, 2-door.
Him carry everybody that come here in that car. You understand? And he did his work. And
I think one of the things that we need to do, Sister Minnie, Frank and Jerry, in days to come and weeks to come, is to look back to go forward, you know, and understand really, say, looking back and going forward is the same thing, just like the brethren said at the conference. And why I'm saying this, that you mentioned D.K. Duncan before. We talk about Rupert Lewis, we talk about Peter Phillips and so on. And we talk about young revolutionaries who seem to have hung up them revolution. And we want to know why. And seem to have to a large extent now being on the side of the capitalists, which is like anti what the revolution was about.
Interview them because
so how did
must be something.
Well, we study them first because them can't trick we. But let me, in terms of them bright and we in terms of the learning. But Jerry, let me ask you something. C.L.R. James seemed to have factored in Rodney's development a whole lot.
C.L.R. James is an African nationalist born in Trinidad, but he was part of the Pan-African movement around the world, especially in London, between the 1920s and 1945. So C.L.R. James, as a Caribbean man, is one of the people who was helping to educate the young, educated intellectuals, African intellectuals, especially born outside Africa. So he nurtured people like Walter Rodney, Richard Small, Robert Bobby Hill, Rupert Lewis, and many females, Jessica Huntley.
And we don't know, we have not in this space and among our generation, the first time we meet up on C.L.R. James, it was in West Indian narrative, and then we talk about the Black Jacobins and the books about Haiti and so on. But in terms of understanding who C.L.R. James was, and as we talk about looking back to go forward, I think this is some of the stuff that we need to look at, and how people like Walter Rodney use academia in the struggle and in the interest of the people. Frank, what was Walter Rodney's attitude to academia and to what was happening at the University of the West Indies during the 60s while he was there, in terms of the connection, the bridge between that, the academy, the university itself, and the people?
Well, just to mention though, at first Rodney was kind of viewed as with some amount of suspicion, right? Because who's in these repressed communities don't really trust anyone coming from the university or too much of the middle upper class people, because them see them as oppressors, coming to exploit them for various reasons, political or otherwise. So some even see him as spies, for the government. However, he did well, Rodney did well, Youth began to gain some confidence and respect for him, So, and they see him as a true brother in the struggle. And that he really wanted to help you to lift their level of consciousness, of self, and to understand, the injustices that was being taking place around them, to them, and the poorer people at large, by the usual government at the time, So, as for soldiers, I and Jerry was one who would drive Rodney car to go pick up certain brethren, when we have this high level elite meeting of the movers of the black movement, and then it eventually grew around Rodney, a nucleus of people developed, and it becomes so massive, and inclusive, that there were big names, as Minnie and Jerry mentioned, from UWI circles, who are big powerful people today,
Trade union circle. People like Scully Scott. Scully Scott.
All right, but I wanted to find out, because I know he said... go ahead, Sista.
He was, at that time, he was like the first set of intellect. These Jerry and Peters and all them just leave JC going to the university. Right? Just leaving from JC going into university. So, and Rodney came in same time. So they were like the first newborn set of revolutionary talking about Africa in a real way, that you have to gear up yourself to go Africa, educate yourself, know Africa, talk to us about Africa. Patty, his wife, she was the one who taught us how to tie the African wrap and all those things. When I used to wear African clothes here, and school over, it's all 200-300 children walking behind me, talk, you come from Africa, lady, talk, let me hear you, talk, let me hear you. She was the first one who taught me and Bunny and Sandra to tie our hair and wear our African clothes.
And what we're hearing in the middle of this, Sister Minnie, is how disconnected we were as a people, among the youth, among the adults and so on, from Africa.
Yes.
So that you wearing African garb down the street was a big occasion.
I remember one night I got to Carib, me and Peter got to Carib, and a whole line of people marched with us got to Carib. Him said, listen, mint, sometime I want to go private. So you have to cool on those clothes. I said, I'm not stopping until all Jamaican wear this fashion. You understand?
Yes.
So when we were coming through, we came through. I would love to see some sister moving up right now, you know.
Go ahead, Jerry. Yes.
Well, hear this now. Michael Manley. When Norman Manley saw how irrelevant the PNP was to the needs of Jamaica, he said he's retiring now because the young generation must come up and take over and become more relevant to the people of Jamaica. Michael Manley, within 1 week of his father dying and funeral in about September the 6th, 1969, Michael Manley decided to imitate Walter Rodney in order to capture back the militants into the PNP. What did he do? Immediately after his father's funeral, he went on a tour of Africa, like how Walter Rodney went in Africa. He went and he took some photographs with Haile Selassie, and he got a walking stick from Jomo Kenyatta. He came back to Jamaica, and he made some of his lieutenants, he didn't talk it out of his mouth, he made some of his lieutenants announce, hold up at the airport in Montego Bay when he come up, hold up this rod of ebony and ivory at this Montego Bay airport and claim that he was given this rod by Haile Selassie to come back and rule Jamaica. So he's captured the spirit of Rodney coming back from Africa and coming to link with the people. He started his campaign against Shearer in the 69 election from the end of 72 election, from the end of 69, and he's claiming that Haile Selassie gave him a rod to come back and rule Jamaica. And a lot of the militants like Paul Miller, D.K. Duncan, Arnold Bertram, and all those black militant nationalists were attracted back into the camp of the PNP, and this is not a sin. They were captured back into the camp of the PNP by Michael Manley's changing of the look of the PNP, and Michael Manley taking on a black image by posing as if he was black militant and posing Selassie gave him a rod of correction to come rule Jamaica. And half of the black militant educated people were attracted back into the PNP. That's why a lot of the people know we would expect to be militant people on behalf of the black people are now in the PNP and the JLP as big ministers or retired people having got a career. I have to say this, Rupert Lewis is a man I admire from I meet him when he was 19 years old. But I was so disappointed 2 years ago when I said to Professor Rupert Lewis, if Marcus Garvey were here now in 2012, what would he be doing? And Rupert Lewis, one of the greatest scholars of Garvey in the history of the world, said to me, if Marcus Garvey was here, he would be working through the PNP or the JLP. Now, this is why those people are now helping the government to try and control the situation at Pinnacle and many other situations and try to deflect the reparation movement and cool it off because they have become nationalists and they want to turn Liberty Hall into a tourist attraction and they want to turn Pinnacle into a tourist attraction. They want to turn Rastafari into a tourist attraction. Well, one more thing. Into a tourist attraction like the statues in Dunn's River, no, in Fern Gully, with the erected penis, which is an imitation of Damien Crawford.
No, we have to pull back on that, Jerry.
No, what I'm saying is not that Damien Crawford don't do anything wrong, you know. I say that they want to turn us. They want to turn us into a tourist attraction, turn Liberty Hall into a tourist attraction.
Yes, but we don't know that statue is an imitation of Damien Crawford.
So
we pull that back.
It's not a sin of Damien Crawford.
But we're pulling it back, Jerry. We're pulling it back.
Well, hear me now. They want to turn the African movement into a tourist attraction, turn Pinnacle into a tourist attraction, and turn Liberty Hall into a tourist attraction. Why have they not given back Liberty Hall to the UNIA?
You're inside of the Africa Forum, Running African, and we're talking about Walter Rodney, the commission of inquiry, the 3-member commission of inquiry is underway in Guyana into the assassination of Walter Rodney. He was assassinated, and many people are pretty sure that the Burnham government was involved in that. People don't even use allegedly anymore. They just say it because of all the information that persons have. The commission of inquiry is underway. They've got their terms of reference, and a Justice for Walter Rodney committee has been set up to ensure that all of that is transparent, that Walter Rodney's memory is honored, that whole thing is fair. We're talking a little bit more about Walter Rodney today, because just talking about the Commission of Inquiry led me to talk to so many young people and not so young people who do not know, don't have a clue about Walter Rodney. And yet there's so much that he was involved here on the ground in Jamaica. So I've asked his friends, colleagues, they worked together, they were there with him, to come this morning to help us to understand who was Walter Rodney, why the government took such wicked and vicious actions against his 26-year-old historian in Jamaica by banning him from Jamaica, why he was assassinated in Guyana. And so Jerry Small, Nana Esiboa, Sister Minnie, and Frank Asphalt are with us to help us to understand that. One of the questions I want to reiterate, because I've asked it before and I'm not quite sure if we got an answer, is in terms of his attitude to academia. Was this new? What was happening in terms of how academia dealt with and viewed the masses, those outside of the university, at the time that Walter Rodney was grounding with the brethren, Jerry?
There were many admirable people out of academia in Jamaica, even before there was a university here. And after the university was established in 1948, one of the greatest things that happened was the New World Movement. People from all over the Caribbean, like Lloyd Best, along with George Beckford, Norman Gervan. May I tell you about them? Walter Rodney himself, some from outside the university, Hugh Small, Bobby Hill. They formed together in a militant movement, both African-minded and leftist in terms of socialists and Marxists, fighting for the rights of the people. Yeah. So New World and other things. Ben Monroe was down in the ghetto from in the 40s. Ben Monroe was down in the ghetto, the Cook-on Lane, down in the 40s, militantly working from them time. But academia are admirable. Man like Orlando Patterson, many people were up there, Mervyn Allen from Trinidad, many people were doing some great work there. But it was like they never reached the stage of organizing institutions to replace the warring factions of the PNP and GLP. The GLP emerged out of the PNP. And it emerged into a gun war between the PNP and the GLP. And after independence, the gun war became worse, which started from in the 40s. But the academia that was doing some great work never come on the ground or on the side to organize institutions to counteract the GLP and the PNP. But we give them great credit. Now, what happened to the black nationalists of the 60s now is that they decided to move out on the ground, linking with the people. So George Best and all of them New World people do some great work. But we went further as a young black nationalist and African. And the further thing we went, we say although most of us are Rastafari, we do not regard Rastafari as being superior to the rest of the people. Because once you see yourself as superior to the rest of the people, you cannot represent the people. And therefore this was a great advance that was made. But academia had a great record of that. But holding back inside the campus gates is when they broke it out of the campus gates now. Even though people like him, Tony Abrams and many others was demonstrating out there now and be against apartheid. So the university and the academics was doing good things, breaking out there, demonstrating against the government and linking to the people. But we went about 5 steps further. We have to give them great credit. Whether it's Tony Abrams or whether it's George Beckford.
As Tim Hector talked about hearing of his friend's assassination, Walter Rodney. Before I go to Tim Hector, though, there was another Guyanese, and his name is slipping me now, who just after Rodney was deported, was exiled.
I still remember him, a doctor.
Right here in Jamaica.
Yes, he was a PhD too. I still remember him.
Do we know why? I mean,
yes, his activity also was linking with the people round and round. And as a matter of fact, he is because he was linking up with the people and moving outside of the campus and helping people to articulate. They want to remember, you cannot deport the Jamaican, the person born in Jamaica.
Right.
You cannot deport Rastafari. So they have to be deporting the people who born outside of Jamaica. And that's why they deported him also. And they deported even some people like Jex Jakes Degia, a teacher teaching down in Santa Cruz, who identified a lot of CIA workers who were on the staff coming through the Peace Corps and infiltrating the black movement and reporting back to the government and the JLP, including Seaga, and reporting back to the United States. Jakes Deja, who blew the whistle on some of them, he also was deported. I think he came from Dominica or one of these places.
So they were deporting who they could deport, who were not Jamaicans. And Sister
Beckford, that doctor did name or something. But he used to go and, yes, when police would beat people and cut up them back and all those things, he would go to the place and help dress these wounds for people because they can't go to the hospital because police looking for you. From his Rasta youth, police is looking for you. So this doctor used to go and do this for us. They were in the struggle. We used to have a doctor because he has student doctors up there. We'd go and look after wounds of people that get brutality against the police and things like that, or even have wounds. But we had that team of people, doctors, everybody were there working together.
So that, Frank, what I'm hearing from Sister Minnie and Jerry here, so there was a concerted effort on the part of a system and the government, and we say government, we mean everybody, opposition, everybody, to quash and to quell and to stop this movement towards full liberation of the African people in Jamaica. So who you could have exiled, you exile, what books you could have banned, you ban, and then who the people on the ground who remain, the young revolutionaries, were persecuted in many, many different ways, whether prisoner or otherwise.
Yeah, that's true, That's why myself and Jerry, we have to keep moving, you know what I mean? And then, we have to move from place to place, keep publishing what we're doing. But after actually the uprising...
C.Y. Thomas. C.Y. Thomas.
C.Y. Thomas. That's a Guyanese who was deported.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
Yes. Yes, go ahead, Frank. So just remember the name of a Guyanese who was deported after Walter Rodney.
Yeah, man. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, so... What we actually do after the Rodney, uprising and thing, we had to really, kind of separate, because that was actually about the time when the 12 tribes organization formed, and, after that I went to the eastern side and set up the Arambi Cultural Center, the first black movement, theater movement, stuff like that, and, where we had trying to get all the Rasta movements together at that time, that was the first attempt to get all these Rasta movements together, the Bobo, the Daya Bimgi, and that was also the first place where the first 7-day and night Bimgi was ever held.
Harambe out of Abyssinia Cottage where Frank Asphalt family won land out there on the waterfront for years. Abyssinia Cottage out the name, and Harambe Theatre is a theatre where Frank Asphalt parent family they have a theatre out there, a movie theatre from them time, and them turn it in a Harambe theatre, and it's pure African culture and economic benefit, because we must make things pay for themselves and not be apologetic about making money, because we have use for money.
So that, Frank, later on, with all this persecution going on and Rodney back by way of Tanzania, Cuba, and then back in Guyana, where we understand he actually went to take up a teaching post.
Yes.
They didn't.
The government blocked him.
Right, and still active. Similar to what he's doing in Jamaica, he's doing on the ground he was doing on the ground in Jamaica. He was doing on the ground in Guyana. So we're hearing Tim Hector and talking about hearing of his friends. And I'm quoting Tim Hector because when I read this, I thought. Wonder what was happening and how did the others feel? I mean, all the revolutionaries who were with Rodney, were they thinking the same way? So he said that he was overwhelmed by the barbarism since political assassination was most rare in the region.
Yes.
And despite the lower class being brutalized by centuries of poverty and lack of opportunity, and where political violence in Jamaica consumed no leader.
Pure foot soldier did have on a shooter.
Right. So that he was...
Roy McGann is the first big officer of the society that the warfare, who did in a gun warfare. Roy McGann. 1980.
So was this the same kind of thing? Here you have, a figure like a Walter Rodney and all the revolutionaries like yourself, like Frank, like Sister Minnie on the ground, doing what you're doing, but not necessarily thinking that what was happening in, say, Spanish Caribbean or Latin America, where people had, assassination could happen. Yeah. The state could kill you.
No, but we were aware of these things, And because of that, we were very security conscious. Mm-hmm. And the security forces, they tried to infiltrate us with spies. They infiltrated most of the leftists. But they say it was very hard to infiltrate the African-minded people, especially Rastafari.
The ones who smoke herb, they really tell us the one them who smoke herb, it's hard to infiltrate them. If you take cocaine, it's easier to infiltrate.
Yeah, well, hear this now. They used to send females to the university, register into courses taught by Walter Rodney, Trevor Monroe and the other militants, get into the courses, sometimes get themselves attached to the lecturer, and get even sexual liaison. Start to have sexual affair with the lecturer to get into them so that they can reach to them. We were aware of these things. We were aware of enough of the police operatives. Some of them is police, some of them is people from the ordinary community who they train to be spies, and they try to infiltrate. And they're trying to poison you, they're trying to photograph you, they're trying to study you and infiltrate every kind of way. And they're trying every kind of economic way, trying to penetrate your family.
This is the Jamaican government?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, man, the government of Shearer and Siaga.
And it don't change because from that time, from slavery to this day, they have not changed one of the rules and laws against black people oppression in this country. And they are black leaders. I am surprised at them,
Frank is here.
Yes, go ahead, Frank.
Say one thing about that aspect of things, because even after the split up after the Rodney uprising, and I went to the east and set up the Arambi Cultural Theatre and Cultural Center, as Jerry mentioned about Rhyme again. They formed, come on and see what we were doing, and he formed a youth club by the name of Black Unity, which was a group of your bad man and gunman.
Yes.
And they wanted to capture that identity, that black identity thing. But they started to threaten us. Man who used to come around me used to get beaten by them man there. I mean, just as they want them to come under where Ramagan.
Under Brigadista.
Right. Me even send message to the ancient red like Bongo Rock man and be a guy to boy, all them Rasta man have to come on at this black unity business, and so all the help around me used to get from like maybe,
SDC.
Good program. Turn into the black unity, they turn all of that into black unity system.
So this is what we say, political tribalism and political violence, infiltrating the whole thing.
Kind of stuff, beating, much man get beaten from around the crime again, black unity system. That was a pain system I set up to oppress you even more,
So with a few minutes that we have left, which is about 3 minutes left in this segment of the program, we didn't talk about your So with a few minutes that we have left, which is talk about your stint in behind bars, literally, because of the struggle, because of the movement, the revolutionary work that you were doing. So in a few minutes, just tell us about that. I mean, how that happened. I know a minute.
Every country that has a oppressive government usually has some political charges that they preserve to put people out of the way where they cannot prove that the people do anything wrong. So they have some other charge where they used to get you out of the way. In Jamaica, the Jamaica government used the ganja law to get people out of the way who was politically dangerous to them. So we know that they were going to come for us after the Rodney thing died down. They came for us on the 27th of October. We know they were coming. They surrounded the house in Augustown with 60 soldiers and 100 of police and informer. And they took us out there at gunpoint. And they searched the whole house. They couldn't find anything. And the superintendent, I soon tell him name, but they were led by Middleton, the assistant commissioner of police, and a superintendent named Duquesne, and superintendent Winston Cox. And a man named Newland, who was a big sergeant, who was the hitman of the police force at the day, he said to Minnie, he said, your name, Minnie, Amelia, your name. And he said, I'm going to send and buy a half pound of herb. And he sent a man open in front of everybody, told them everybody, bought the half pound of herb, bring it back and say, I'm charging you, Jerry Small. Now they tried to frame us. We went to court. And
so we who that? 6
of us, me and Minnie, Sister Rookwood, brother Ozzy Pingchong, brother Eugene McNair, and brother David DePaz, a white Jamaican, Jewish Jamaican who was a Rasta from in the 50s when they played Sunlight with KC.
About 2 weeks.
They took 6 of us there. And they
To
frame
jail.
us
Which
with ganja.
where? To
Halfway
jail.
through jail. Them strip me naked in front of the woman them. And so them going to trim me with matches and kerosene oil. All kind of thing. Anyway, we go to court over and over till January the 19th.
Now we spend about 2 weeks in the interrogation between.
The case
day.
finally tried on 19th of January 1969. And I was vexed because I want to prove my innocence that them frame me. But the lawyer said, no, let us do it this way. Let us ask them, the ganja that you find Jerry Small with, was it male or female? Because ganja is divided into male or female, and it was only the female one that was illegal. So I vexed about that, kind of have none. But the lawyer, Frank Phipps, was a man. Hold on, I have to finish it. No, I have to finish this. The lawyer, Frank Phipps, was a lead attorney, asked them, the government chemist, the ganja that you found, Jerry Small, did you test it? Him say yes. Him say, did you test it whether it was male or female? The court was teared down because there was no rule how to test it for male and female. And because of that, they free me up. And for 11 months in Jamaica, no one was convicted of ganja because it took them 11 months to change the law because there was no way to test for male or female. And for 11 months between January 69 and December 69, till them change the law. Back to Minnie.
And at that time, we have revolutionary lawyers too, because about 13 lawyers coming to
volunteered.
Volunteer. Then it's slowly, then it's Dudley Thompson,
Frank Phipps,
your brother,
Barnett. It was Lloyd Barnett who discovered that law. That is only discovered that they didn't have a test with the female ganja.
I mean, about 13 lawyers come in and defend us free of cost.
Yeah. But you spent 2 weeks in jail being interrogated and so on. And the interrogation is what? Them asking?
No, they are trying to find out. They say that them lose some transmission equipment, electronic transmission equipment from camp. And David DePaz was pulled aside in the jail and told that if he would testify, that is, we take the electronic equipment from out of Upper Camp, he would be freed over the charge.
Or if it's we start...
They called Minnie and Sister Rookwood and they try offer them to testify against us. They tried everything. They say that 30,000 rounds of ammunition is missing from the university shooting range. Because at that time, every high school and the university arresting is at rifle range where they train people to fire a rifle. And 30,000 ammunition, 30,000 round ammunition was missing. And they tried to get one of the 6 to testify that yes, it's we moved the ammunition. All kind of thing they were trying.
And they would go to Jerry and say that I say so and so because we were telling the truth, we were dealing with it, they couldn't mess us up. And then they would come back to me and say, Jerry say that because they did
divide and rule.
Separate.
And at the end of the day, the persecution continued. Right? It didn't stop there because they couldn't keep you in prison by whatever false means. As we look back at Walter Rodney, what lesson do we carry forward from all of that, from that time into this time, about the revolution, about the young people who were involved, how things were done? Frank, let me start with you. Just 30 seconds, please. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, the youth really need to, take a leap out of the book of what Jerry and myself, were actually doing at that time, you know what I mean? And that they can get themselves together, and in a united front, and keep pushing, keep educating the youth, let them realize there's much more life than just, sitting around and hoping that the system
will change. Yeah, we have to do something. Thank you, Frank. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thanks for linking with us this morning. Thank you. All right, we're just a minute before news. Jerry.
Well, one of the main lessons is this. Walter Rodney, like a lot of us, especially young people, was a little bit too adventurous. So they studied his movement and studied his personality, and Burnham was able to infiltrate his organization, infiltrate some of the women, because the same thing happened in the WPJ and the PNP, infiltrate the women them, and infiltrate him through sexual means and money means, and set people against one another. They infiltrated him and set him up by offering him a bomb that he could use to blow up the prison guy and free out some of the people them out of the prison. Now, the same way they try to infiltrate us, they study what you eat, where you go, which movie you go to, who you associated, what kind of car you drive, and they try to make a plan how to infiltrate you, get you out of the way physically, or get you a woman to go at war, or get to try to penetrate your woman or penetrate your man and get out.
So what do we take? What do we learn that lesson and do?
We must be aware of who we associate with. Be very aware of what kind of plans you are making. Be very aware of people infiltrating in, whether it is the Russian through the KGB or it is the American through the CIA, whether it is the PNP through the gunman and the Don, and infiltrating ideas into Rasta, said the Rasta must have a Don or a bad Rasta have gun or beat down people, and infiltrate and destroy.
We have to wrap now, be mindful.
And also infiltrate organizations where it becomes the ownership of a few man or one man claims them own the organization and him dictate things to the rest of the people.
Sister Minnie, what lessons do we take from that?
I just want to say the spirit of our brother is here with Brother Rodney. He joined the ancestor, and that spirit still goes on. And we want to say, give thanks and praises, that the women in Jamaica must know that they have a very important part. Just like how our sister Prime Minister there.
Yes,
Portia is there. You see, she's in a very, we can go very far to do mighty things. And I just pray that she turn and start to do some things for her African self. Now that I hear that she get honorable citizen in Ghana. So women have a great part to play.
Oh, gotta wrap it to some minutes.
And it's not, we want Jamaican people stop shake them, the brethren stop shaking and rub finger and start to put up the fist and say black power and get back the power that we have lose, because that was the symbol, black power. And when you say that, you feel it and it go up mightily when all of us say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sister Minnie. Thanks to my friends and friends of Walter Rodney, Jerry Small, Sister Minnie, Nana Asiboa, and to Frank Asphalt.
When I was 18, just after my first child was born, the Commonwealth Games were held in Jamaica. World records were broken. Now 48 years later, my grandson is here, 18 years old. He is entering the third stage of education. Jamaicans of Josh's age group are doing great things at the Commonwealth Games. But it's time to eject the ruling family of Britain and outlaw any ruling class in Jamaica. So over to you now, Josh.
I'm just looking forward to entering a new stage in my life, and hopefully I can spend some more time at the show where I can get advice from some other people who have been through the same things that I'm about to go through now.
Well, thanks. I'm so glad you'll be here at the University of the West Indies. Straight up, News Talk 93 FM. I'm Jerry Small. Yes, well, welcome to my guest here now, Dr. Kadamawi Knife, who is well known to a lot of people in the audience, radio audience, and well known to the universe, well known to me from about 20 years now.
Yeah,
So,
enough years.
Yes, sir.
I give thanks, Jerry.
And you have a company of your
son, Bongo.
Great.
Yes.
You homeschool him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, as a matter of fact, a sister of mine actually sent I think it's a World Bank, one of those international organization reports on education systems within the Latin America and the Caribbean. You know, and raised a lot of concerns about the education system. They actually argue that the best education system is that which is in Cuba in terms of high-level teachers, and the Cuba's education system is actually ranked above a lot of middle-income and high-income countries globally. So it's a concern, and that is one of the reasons a lot more persons were speaking about homeschooling, you know?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because we're going to speak on the Walter Rodney, you know, Walter Rodney lecture.
Yeah.
Walter speaks a lot about Rastafari people and other indigenous people. And one of the things that Rastafari always questioned was the effectiveness of the education system in terms of the culture where it imparts. And you see it in this day now, it has come full circle as people recognize that the education system as we deal with it is not the most effective. As a matter of fact, the Bloom's taxonomy, which was revised in 1995, actually argues that it is innovation and creativity which is at the highest levels of learning, and not synthesis and evaluation. You know, and the innovation and the creativity really comes from self, one being self. So that part of self, the innovation and the creative part, has been in our ways imprisoned by the way we deal with education. So even though we are very innovative and creative people, we don't have much innovation being transformed from just, well, we have much creativity being transformed from those ideas into things that are really useful in the landscape, although naturally innovative and creative, because the education system doesn't really incorporate those things in a meaningful way. Until I reach university, I'm saying, boy, I've got to be a rounded student. You know? When we should have been trying to get the youth rounded from the start.
And then now when you reach here, you kind of either specialize or you build on.
Exactly, you know. So yeah, homeschool, I don't go.
Yeah, that's great. That is great to know. And you know, so my parents, it was my mother really, but I think it's my parents' decision. It's homeschool me and my sister start out now, my little sister. I don't know about the bigger one, but I suspect so too.
Yeah.
And by the time we reached our school, we was way ahead.
Of the regular school.
And right through school, we continue being ahead of my age group because of that early foundation. There was not a miraculous.
It's crucial, man. I mean, I know that circumstance and things determine how persons can deal with them education, but those in the position for those have to really, really check it. You know, and I always use a simple example which says that if a youth is in a regular school, I'm in school, say from 8 to 2, from 8 to 12 is 4, 2, that is 6 hours, I have like an hour and a half in between. So it means I have approximately 5-6:30, 300 minutes in terms of face-to-face engagement in a classroom. If we assume that in that class you have 30 students per class in that 300 minutes, if they should get individual attention, the maximum attention possible for each child to get is 10 minutes. Because it's 30 divided by 300 minutes, so it's 10 minutes. So it means that even if your youth is going to that school, if you can spend half an hour a day with the youth in some program, they give him 3 times as much attention that he will get or she will get than what you get in a regular schooling system. So any kind of schooling in the home is extremely important, you know. And so even those in the school realize that the school system can't do enough, and I'm saying to our parents, what we need to help out with the youth education. And recognize the importance of this thing, but the reality don't allow us to do those things, you know. You go to grow like where I grow in a jungle now, film parents so stressed in terms of funding, them have to go up on the work, seeing them go on the work to try and make some money, get them school into the public system. The teacher is so frustrated because she don't get no good pay, plus she have her own problems that yard for sort out. So it's a whole frustrated dynamic, and at the same time you still have to applaud even the teachers and the parents who still have to do it, because amidst the lack of resources, them still doing these positive things, because check how much youth who still coming from these communities who excel in educationally, you know. So even though the system set away, and I'm saying homeschooling, even in that bad systems, some persons still making it work, you know. But does that half an hour again, addition to what is being done, I think it can give some really serious outcomes to the country.
Yeah, man. Because as you mentioned, I was talking about it in my own comments in between before you came. After the homeschooling and them start sending go to school, you know, little children, 5, 6, 7, parents and even fathers love to talk to little children because their natural affection is there. When you say the natural intelligence of them, it's that thing where intrigue parents, especially when our father come home.
Yeah.
But it's by the time I reach high school now, before high school I'm at 9, little after that I'm at 10, and them way there. My old man no converse with that again. And when me a big man, me and him build back a relationship. Me a big man, you know, with children, you know.
Yeah.
You know, time for converse because the job where him have, and him I try to keep up.
Exactly.
And I try to move up in the society.
Yeah.
Him have to do him work.
You see right now, Jerry, I think I learn from a lot of people, and I tell people out there that anyway I youth them can't go, I'm not going there, you know. Seeing, I mean, I did in an institution for a number of years, and I observe even lecture on them youth relationship, and I don't think it is the most airy relationship, and that now got me to why. You know? So, the reality is, wherever I go, even in the studio or at a meeting, I mean, the space, the workplace itself must accommodate these things now. If I'm going to international places, these are some of the best practices now. You have place for children because people work at a place of youth.
Yeah.
And so when the youth is near to them, them feel more secure.
Yeah.
Then productivity increase. It actually enhance the productivity in the organization.
Yeah, of course.
So when I go to a meeting at any organization, I used to be there. I can afford to give my iPad, so I'm there doing some work on the internet, you know. I have some sites which I willing to share, like Khan Academy and some other sites that are really good sites for our youth to learn. So the learning space of the youth is everywhere the youth come on. It's just where them have the access. Where there's an ICT platform, I have a text material because it can be anywhere sitting down reading a magazine. get exposure to new words. New words means him can create more sentences, him can have more conversation. You know, him can start to learn more. You know, if you're traveling, if I have to go overseas and I'm saying I'm going to carry my youth overseas, that becomes part of his geography class, you know.
Of course.
In a very real way.
I tell you.
You know, so who in the position must do it, and if we're in a position to share the experience as well, we'll share the experience, you know, and see how we can make this thing your work. The school system have its own problems. And I think some of us can do some things outside of the school system to make it work more better for a lot of children.
Yes, sir. I wasn't going to interrupt the flow what you're saying, but anyway, we're going to go for a break and come back straight up. Yes, welcome back to Straight Up. I'm your host, Jerry Small, with my guest here today, you know, Dr. Kadama with Knife, who is giving the 19th annual Walter Rodney lecture this Thursday evening at the University of the West Indies. Is the usual place at
N1,
N1,
at
yes,
5 o'clock.
at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Thursday afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And this Dr. Karama with Knife is somebody who has explored and experimented and practiced many different endeavors and exercises in development, both economic and otherwise.
Yeah.
First, I want to start by telling me the title of your lecture this year. Are you connected with Walter Rodney?
Exactly. Well, the title is Rethinking Development from the Ground Up. You know, and I think that very important. And why we say from the ground up? Because usually a lot of the things that we try in Jamaica have always been something that has originated outside of the country. And we don't want to take into account some of the uniqueness about the whole Jamaican Caribbean experience, which itself creates an advantage for many of us. And so most of those models really tend to support the established business class, private sector, as against looking at the more dynamic space, which the evidence has shown. The dynamic space being the people on the ground, what we call grassroots. And we'll go check it. We in our country which has not grown for the past 50 years, despite the fact that we have created so many incentive schemes and packages using so many models to support the private sector. No growth for 50 years, but yes, we have seen a lot of material advancement in the country. It means that there is a space in Jamaica that is generating significant amount of wealth that is actually flowing into that same private sector space. That space is a space that we're saying, well, we're actually grown with. That's the part him saying grounding with him, growing with the people on the ground, trying to get a real understanding of how this thing here work, what they do, you know. And so sometimes when you're speaking about a person, it's best to let the person speak for themselves. You know? So I just want to read something quickly which give you a kind of context in terms of what the Virgin mind was like. He has said at the end of his document, which he write, Grown My Brother, said, "Now we have gone through historical experience through which, by all accounts, we should have been wiped out. We have been subjected to genocidal practices, millions raped from the West African continent, a system of slavery in the West Indies which was designed to kill people. The documents are there. White slave masters used to conduct a discussion. They said, look, we have some blacks. What do we do with them? It is better to let them grow old and work for us for an extended period of time, or should we let him work for a specified period of time, work him so hard and let him die and buy a fresh slave?" And the consensus of opinion was this: take a prime African black, work him to death in 5 years, and you make a profit. So the system aimed at killing us out. Now, the next paragraph he argues, now not only have we survived as a people, but the black brothers in Kingston, Jamaica in particular. And he said Jamaica in particular because remember that Walter is a Guyanese who came to Jamaica, did his first degree, went away, did his PhD, and came back in about January, yes, 1968. So he said Jamaica in particular, these are brothers who up to now are every day performing a miracle. It is a miracle how these fellows live. They live and they are physically fit. They have a vitality of mind. They have a tremendous sense of humor. They have depth. How do they do that in the midst of the existing conditions? And this is in 1960s, you know. So it wasn't an easy kind of time. And they create. They are always saying things. You know that some of the best painters and writers are coming out of the Rastafari environment. The black people in the West Indies have produced all the culture that we have. whether it be steel band or folk music. Black bourgeoisies and the white people in the West Indies have produced nothing. Black people who have suffered all these years create. That is amazing. So these are the things you learn when you are in contact with our people. Now you see, that kind of statement which Walter concludes his writings and Grounding my brother with, I think is extremely important, because it gives you an idea of the kind of situation that we found ourselves in, and how do we use our innovation and creativity to do so many things. Yes? And remember, I know, with the operating the context where them say that there's hives of scarcity and that they like to let people think there's the fittest and the fittest survive. Now, if we have gone through that kind of thing and what they say is true, it means that naturally Jamaican and Caribbean people are amongst one of the fittest people in the world, mentally, physically, and spiritually. But we continue to neglect and deny the things that emerge from our people, still looking for our solution outside of self and outside of the Caribbean space. Not that something outside can't work, you know, but it must be grounded. We tend to cut and paste. Now, when I review some of the work of the people who Walter would have been amongst, you know, I matter about Rastafari people, and I look from Bedward through Marcus, through Howell, through Claudius Henry, through the Bobo Ashanti, you know, all of the movements that emerge. I realize that those persons that he spoke of a certain kind of mission in terms of how do they transform the lives of themselves and the whole nation, black nation. And each of these things had some kind of enterprise activity associated with it, which would have supported these missions. Now, my area of work is social entrepreneurship, and I'm saying that what I'm doing is nothing new from what those persons are doing. I might have some more models and framework, but that's exactly what they're doing. And we'll continue to use excuses. I remember that in the University of the West Indies, you know, many persons rejected the ideas of the plantation economists, who I know Walter would have actually engaged with as well. You know, you talk about Bess and Beckford and Levitt, and they argued that they need to destroy the entire plantation system. That is what they argued. And their work were rejected by their own colleagues in the university. By 1972, the plantation school was no more. And many of those colleagues embraced leftist and semi-leftist dependency models and different kind of models, which have not worked in the country in any real kind of way. And their excuse was that you couldn't model these things. You see, the truth is these things can be modeled, man. The reality is many of those persons were way ahead of them time, and it is just now today that scholarship is catching up with the ideas advanced by those brethren from 30, 40, 50 years ago. And even persons who were practicing these things before. And so in the lecture I want to actually present one of these models to let people recognize that the things that we have said and done as a people in surviving.
All right, which one of the models you want?
I am going to look at what we call social entrepreneurship. You know, and the social entrepreneurship model is one which says that the organization, the entity, the being is mission driven. You're driven by a mission, but you recognize you can only sustain what you're doing through the establishing of serious enterprise.
In other words, the mission is to get back the African people and survivors in Jamaica upon them foot. But if it don't have an economic function, it can't
sustain.
Can't survive.
No, it can't sustain.
Because down to the church, them have economic function.
Exactly.
Otherwise, they wouldn't take up collection every time.
And I tell people that the church have a very serious kind of business model because them offer you value.
Yeah,
which is not
service.
Yeah, but the value is not tangible. As a matter of fact, them ultimate value is not even something that you will consume while you're alive, but people continue to invest in it.
Yes.
So you show you the skillfulness
so
of the church.
You're buying futures.
Exactly. Exactly. You're really investing in futures. You know, so people must realize that all these things are model, but we have not spent the time to look at the things that the people have done in a real way. But importantly, a lot of these ideas are now being absorbed by some state organizations. So SDC is now saying that we can't go into a community to just run a community program. It have to have some self-sustaining element, which is an enterprise component. You know, and if you look at how the groups of people have operated, because we're not getting anything from people, always have some kind of business in the mind. But I think the key thing is for us to realize that many of the solutions that we seek externally are actually here. And many of the things that people apply internationally as models that they use to build their country are actually here as well. Many persons
I'm going to look for something now.
Yes.
I meet you up in this area because you was at the university, and for a long time you be in this area, yes, after teaching this, that, and the other. And I live in this area when Walter Rodney come to Jamaica. And yet in this area now, Augustown and the environs is a free village where people set up.
Yes.
How much land availability is there in this area. The land there, you can be kept up inside on the hillside.
Exactly.
And none of our brother will build up all the community. But it get mashed down by political operative, the way how it was going, you know. Because them said this thing are going too good for them, not in control it. And them actually use gun and them kind of thing and kind of disperse that mashed up, you know.
Exactly.
But there's a look on the whole of empty hillside, whole of land.
All right.
The whole campus here built on a plantation which should have been either divested or kept as a collective or rested back as a collective. Well, in one form, the university is a kind of collective.
Yeah. And I'm doing some work because remember you have Dr. Levine Burke who was down there doing some work under the township program. I know that Boxell is doing some work. But when I look at Augustown, the first that will come to my mind is Bedward. And when I go down to Bedward space and I look at the site and the development, I mean the first idea of putting 4 houses on any kind of platform was what Bedward was doing down in Augustown. You know what I mean? And if you look at where it is, that is near the river. Remember, you know, traditionally rivers, waterways represent places for enterprises.
Yeah, man. Civilization around the river.
I mean, something not right with the brain of the people in leadership position because we have so much good in front of us that we could use as examples and we don't use it. And still today, we're still not really celebrating Bedward as how Bedward should be celebrating. I know that the place was supposed to be considered as a heritage site, but it's not just about a heritage site. We have to go beyond the heritage and say, what were the things these persons were doing to sustain it? How is it a virgin in those early times can get 30,000 people to dress in white to demonstrate and do a cell phone? And these persons were coming from all across the island. 30,000 people full of the stadium, you know. It's not the bit of people you're talking about, you know. So what kind of competence, what kind of communication skills, when people pitch an idea, how you pitch the idea, you know? How you get buy-in, because that is part of our problem now. Many persons today who are MPs have a lot of resources. And them can't generate 10,000 people to come and hear what them have to say. And them have resources. Them have high-tech equipment. Them have email. Them have social. Them cannot get it. Because people have not bought into your idea. So what is it that Bedwood was doing? In a time where communication was not as advanced as it was today, is today. How could he have gotten those amount of persons from all over the island to buy into that idea? So much so that it becomes a threat to the status quo. But I must go and learn. I mean, this is the one, but I don't need to learn about Marx. Why am I not learn about Bedward? You understand what I say? Why am I never learn about Marcus? Now every day me hear people talk about the bridging from the Grameen Bank. And I do applaud the work of the bridging from the Grameen Bank. But there's no that the biggest...
I mean, the man out in the Far East.
Yes, the biggest transnational social enterprise model to be developed would have been Marcus Garvey, UNIA. When you look at the UNIA as the umbrella organization, yes, which is trying to liberate a nation of people. He recognized that they needed to have enterprise and set up the African Communities League. And the African Communities League have the Black Star Line Shipping Company, a mega transnational shipping organization, which is crucial for Jamaica now, you know, because Marcus, at the turn of the century, recognized that Jamaica, with the opening of the Panama Canal, Jamaica will be an important part of that hub as well. And he told people that you have expansion, and 100 years later, you have the expansion, and Jamaica don't own a shipping line, but so we don't own a plane. We don't own a plane line. We don't understand these kind of thinking, you know. So no.
But remember, you know, remember that the organization of the labor movement and the organization of the nationalist movement was done on the condition that you quit out the UNIA, the People's Political Garvey, and Marcus Garvey, you know. And is after that now them supplant that model, the same model. Just like how they mash down Bedward, put him aside or mash down Augustown and then come up and supplant them. So what you are doing now, you are not expected to come from jungle, do well in a high school, go university, do well, and doing other things for decades after you graduate from university and still at our boys. You are expected to go up in the society. You are not expected to keep on your dreadlocks more than a 10 or a 15 year. And after that you leave that. And you now supposed to be the Minister of Development in the government or in the opposition spokesman. You're not expected to hold on, Panda. You're supposed to leave that.
So, you know, as I said, I remember Because even though it's Walter Rodney, you know, I read and I said the two books that I like the most would have been this by Walter Rodney and Persistent Poverty by George Beckford. And I remember in the chapter 8 of that text, just paraphrasing George Beckford, he said we should not expect those from the intelligence or the higher social strata to do what is necessary to transform the lives of people socially, politically, economically, and psychologically because of the most colonized minds. So naturally those who are going to do it will emerge from the lower social strata. And when I think about it, I know people write within context and they write about what they see around them, and based on his contemporaries they were saying they don't think that these brethren hold a kind of philosophy that will be transformative. But we have found as well that the demography of the university has changed significantly over the past 30 years, and many youths who Walter grounded with are now children of those persons are in the university itself. You know, you mentioned myself, and we can mention a couple more persons, man, because you have Herbert and you have Taylor, them. You have so many youths out there.
Yeah.
You know, Andre Harden, many of us who come from these places and they are out there in the media doing some work, and them on the ground doing some work. When Herbert do a lot of work, I had his program, he used to speak about the research that he was doing while he was here. You know, so the demography has changed. And I think that even the university landscape, because the demography has changed, they have more participation. And I mean students in the university, the question surrounds the faculty. And a lot of those faculty are still members from that generation of Walter. So even though there might be an increase in the grounding, it's not the population that we expect to drive it is doing the grounding. You're right. Once we get some education now, once we say move up a kind of social ladder, and that itself is a part of the illusion, you know. I mean, the purpose of education is to serve man, and to serve one's people. Well, if you not do that, it's almost like a betraying your own people.
Let's go for another break. Straight up. Yes, if you want to get the whole lecture, you have to come Thursday evening, 5 o'clock at N1. Thursday evening 5. So we just whet your appetite. And when we say wet, you know, we don't mean say we are moisten it, you know. We mean say we are wet it, which the original word is sharpen. Because you are wet it, you wet your knife.
Yeah.
As a whetstone, sharpen it. Well, hear this now. When Walter Rodney come to Jamaica, one of the first things him write in him book them. Because people say two things. Recently, Carlin Cooper had to correct the Walter Rodney Foundation, which I think based in Atlanta, because they put out a statement that, you know, the term that Walter Rodney coined, groundings, and she had to correct and say, no, this term was there a long time.
And him say it as well.
Yes. So when he came to Jamaica, and him write it because people were saying from that time, him say, when I came to Jamaica, I did not start anything. I joined myself to a group of youth who was doing something. And I as youth now, mostly teenagers, was linking ourselves with some work where Haile Selassie did start in the 30s.
Yeah.
And then now, when him came, him found us doing that, him saying, will help us because I'm just coming from Africa. Him have experience teaching, not only that, him had experience in the liberation front, even militarily and physically he was there.
Exactly.
So him start help with. Him said to we, within about 2 months, him said to we, say, why you youths don't form an organization? Because you are the most active and outstanding group of youths, I say, in Jamaica, in the African struggle amongst Rastafari. We say, well then, we not start nothing. We are wait for reactivate the Ethiopian World Federation that Haile Selassie did activate in 1937. Him said to us that the federation is a dead thing. I don't blame him. He said it's a dead thing because it was largely dead because people had taken it over. Anyway, within a year and a half of him start to help with January 1968. By August 69, a new branch of the Ethiopian World Federation come check we up in the youth student, them come check we down a bed down in August now.
Yeah.
Because enough of we live down there. Myself, Peter lives enough of we. Them check we down August and don't find me. And them send a message up to student union and find someone. When we gather up, we meet them halfway, right down at the play field there. But finally we link up with them. And most of it did become very active in night. Later on it took on the name. It had the name from before, you know, but it never put it forward. Little more it took on the name, the 12 tribe of Israel.
Okay.
Just like how you have name about Bedward,
yes,
UNIA, Howell, and the whole of them movement coming up, had an economic activity to keep it going. So it was the Ethiopian World Federation, Charter 15, and the 12 tribe of Israel. They have the same kind of communal drive, you know, and communal decision and economy and all those things.
Exactly.
There. Some of them privately own like the bag industry, but it's brethren around, and some of them commonly own in common. And it go on bubble. And then 1977, you know, just 8 years after, 8 years after the whole of it come together and the thing really start grow. The organization by and large shut down most of the activities that used to keep it going bubbling. That is why you only come here. Well, you come still 12 tribes, but you don't really see it in the full flower. Yeah. Like, they never wonder about that.
So why? But
no, tell me, I ask you.
Yeah, but
when you come here, you didn't come here, boy. You come from concrete jungle,
yeah, man.
And that's how we did there. When the thing really are bubbling. Before the jungle build up, you know.
Top jungle, man, I know the exact space when you there. As a matter of fact, we have a local farm right at that same space right now. One thing, when I observe Rastafari, I look at the 12 tribes and I say, in terms of business, the 12 tribes seems to want the ones who are most focused on the business enterprise. You know, but I also know that a lot of the ones who were in the 12 tribe movement were some of the ones who also become engaged in the political movement as well. And so, what I think, as always, as I see how politicians operate, even on the campus, once politics becomes a part, I think that becomes a real problem. Once partisan PNP, JP politics becomes a part of it, will become a real problem. Because, check the origin. You mentioned Marcus starting the first political party, and those parties emerged as a response to what Marcus was doing when Norman Malik came as a Fabian socialist, and him and them people doing them thing together. And the US coming again, and by 1941 them create an next party with the aim of really, as they say, suppressing what Marcus was doing. Even till this day we can see still suppression. So I'm saying that is the infiltration. I'm see it happening in the rest of them. Currently, you know, some people are really careful, you know. Because I see it happening in Rastafari this day, you know. And as you would grow in Rastafari, you know, and say, watch a man, we don't join politics, you know. It's non-aligned movement. We align ourselves with the people on the ground. We align ourselves with political parties. You don't mean say in any confrontation with anyone. You don't have time for war because you have time for try to sort out things amongst the people. Anytime the national parties and politics come into this thing here, it becomes and I think it's the same kind of thing. Now many ones who leave the church of Rastafari and go into politics, I don't see them still maintain that kind of philosophy where when I talk about collective security and self-reliance.
Well, come like you was here in the studio doing it first hour. Because people believe like some of your collude bandits.
No, but truth is truth.
And all I ask is that you growing up in a jungle and thing, you must have come to hear about 12 tribes.
Yeah, man.
And how it become like a legend, just like how people come here about Marcus Garvey and you and I and never see it. I say, I know you come although you still say 12 tribes, mostly entertainment and that.
However, I know, I can tell you, you know, so there's a positive move emerging again in the 12 tribes in a phenomenal way. Can you see? We find that a lot of the youths who chanting now, Janine, Protege, Kabaka, them, all those, well, Kabaka to a lesser extent, Chronics them emerge out of like a second generation or third generation of parents who hold that 12 tribe leads, and them focus is very different. Them take the business very serious, the platform is serious, the collusion and cooperation is serious. And them know that is organic sound people want, so them gone for the live band music. So the platform established by 12 tribes, I think, is a really important one. In the 1990s, you find that the music emerged from a Bobo Ashanti platform. You know, but the Bobo Ashanti was not so much into the traditional business. Yeah. You know, and we recognize that the Bobo Ashanti was more into natural fiber businesses. And of course, wellness is a big thing now. So we need to rethink the model of the Bobo Ashanti and say how we can get these things that them used to produce. Now the straw thing, the plastic thing I'm selling now. The original straw mat and broom, how can you get that into California, into places that want to use biodegradable goods and services? Whether it be for aesthetics or for functionality. You know, so the Bobo Ashanti rise in the music. Show you like Sizzler, but them stay in the music. The 12 tribes youth now in the music, but looking at the whole value chain. So youth have the social media platform. Them streaming them thing, them doing videos, you know, them into merchandising, them doing so much thing. But there's a lull.
Yeah.
I think the 80s kind of, I say, Jerry, that's it's important that Virgin like yourself and other, what we call ancients, dear at the lecture, because while I can bring certain things, there's a reservoir of knowledge that I can bring to the discussion, which I think are going to make the thing more rich, you know. And so, people must realize that the lecture is not about persons who are here in the university, you know, because sometimes we behave that way in the university, you know. The lecture is for real people on the ground. We have real people here as well, yes, but I mean people on the ground who have things to say. because it's in the exchange of the information that all our grow as, you know. So I'm probably in a position where I can use...
And this was the key about Walter Rodney, you know.
See?
Walter Rodney was determined to link the campus with the outside and the outside with the campus. And him get a hard fight in here, but him did succeed.
Yes, I mean, you can see the evidence of it, man, even though we still have built some high wall and appear enough security. You know, but I see the transformation in the population of the universities. And many of the programs that we have, for example, in our program that we run, we have over 500 students in the street every semester, writing business plans and proposals and strategic plans for our organization and community group. And when I value the work, it's $60 million Jamaican worth of work, and it is one program. You have Olivine-Burke, you have Shilling for them, you have Box Hill, you have Taylor, many of us doing many of these things. You have over 100 odd groups, clubs and societies in the university who are there doing programs with different groups in the communities. So you can see the evidence of that culture of knowing that the function of the university is to support and serve the population. The university is a public institution, it's a private institution, you know. Youth have a right to be here, it's not a favor we're doing people, it's for them place, you know. Moreover, many of our ancestors die on the campus, man. Go by Taylor and you can see the burial spaces.
Yeah.
That was the burial ground for people who died during enslavement. So it's not like he's a visitor right here. And so come to the presentation.
Yeah.
More important than when you bring your mind, because we have too much ideas that we don't get a chance to share, you know. And in this session we're not going to say we spend the whole time talking and then a man say, boy, I run out of time.
No.
No, that is not it, you know.
And then now, before the Thursday afternoon, maybe on Thursday itself or Wednesday,
Yes.
but more like a Thursday itself, you can come back, come spend a 10 minutes here and refresh,
Yeah, man, definitely.
refresh
I
the people
mean-
interest, because this is what the Walter Rodney lecture series is supposed to be really about. Thank you very much, Dr.
Yeah, man,
Sir.
give thanks and just keep, this positive thing happening. Yes?
Yes, sir.
All right,
Straight
give
up,
thanks.
straight
All
up.
right.